The very first reading that we've heard, a very old story that we all are familiar with from our children's Bibles. It's the story of Noah, who built this ark when it starts to rain, and he gathers all the animals inside, and with his family he survives the purging floods that came from heaven. At the end of this journey in the ark, God tells Noah, this is it. I'm done with punishing people. That's not what I want. That's not what I'm about. I'm going to start again with you. I forge a bond with you, a covenant. This is about you and me. And in case you ever forget, after it rains and the sun starts shining again, like today, look at the sky, and often you'll see a rainbow. Let that remind you of this bond, this relationship that we have from now on. Just like the rainbow touches both the heaven and the earth, that is like our relationship, heaven and earth, you and me. We go together, and nothing should ever break that relationship again. This beautiful story of the book of Genesis makes it clear what this time of Lent, and in a bigger sense, what our entire life is ultimately about. It's not about the things we do. It's not about rules and regulations. It's not about how much money you make or how much people admire you and like you on Facebook. This time of Lent and our lives are ultimately about the one thing that remains, the one thing that lasts forever, and that is our relationship with God. It's God's love for us and our often imperfect love for Him. All the rest is unimportant. And I'm happy that this first Sunday of Lent puts that to the forefront, because that makes you understand everything else about Lent. It enlightens what we read in the Gospel, where there is this strange story at the beginning of the public life of Jesus, where before he starts to travel through the country and meet people and heal the sick and everything else, before all that, he is driven to the desert by the Holy Spirit. The version that we read today in the Gospel of Mark is the shortest version that we have of that event, but the other evangelists also mention it, sometimes in great detail. And these 40 days for Jesus are a time during which it's all about God. When you go into the desert, you leave everything behind, literally everything, even food, comfort, a bed, a home, your friends, your career, your planning. It's just 40 days in a place where there's nothing else to distract you. And it is by doing that Jesus marks that his entire life, everything that follows, is ultimately about one thing: this relationship, this love between him and God. And what he wants to teach us ultimately comes down to the question, how do you grow that relationship? And what's in the way? What should you get rid of? There's an interesting detail in the Gospel, according to Mark, that is very telling. When Mark says Jesus was brought into the desert, there were wild beasts. Now, this is not just something that Mark mentions to kind of spice up the story. Like it was dangerous there, and there were ferocious animals and venomous snakes and whatnot, just to make Jesus, look more courageous. Jesus doesn't need that. But the fact that Mark mentions wild beasts rings a bell among the people that first heard this gospel. Because it reminds us of the fact that one day, a long time ago, in a world that is very different from ours, there was also this man. who also was in this strange world surrounded by wild beasts. And his name was Adam. Adam, the first man, lived in this beautiful paradise created by God for him. And he lived there with Eve. And that world was filled with wild animals, but they were not dangerous. There was a harmony, a balance between everything in creation. And this gospel wants to remind us of the fact that Jesus is very much like Adam at the start of everything. In the first story, it's all about Adam and Eve and their relationship with God. And if that relationship is good, everything else is also good. You don't have to fear the wild animals. But that relationship gets tested in that first story. And that relationship gets broken. Because Adam and Eve choose something else to replace God. They are lured by the serpent, by the snake, by Satan, to let go of their relationship with God and to choose power instead. If you eat from this tree, you will be just like God. In other words, you won't need God anymore. And when they fall for that temptation, everything else falls as well. And wild beasts all of a sudden become dangerous enemies and a threat to life. And even people become a threat to themselves. That is the reality that marks our history. Until this new Adam appears, Jesus, who again is brought in the desert and who is also tempted, who is confronting Satan. The same fallen angel that had tempted Adam is now tempting Jesus. We know from the other versions of this story how much Satan tries to present Jesus with an alternative for God. If you leave your Father, if you leave God and you choose me, I will give you power, I will give you food, I will give you so much. But this time, this new Adam does not fall for it. He does not believe the devil. He is not willing to give up his relationship with his Father for something that ultimately is worth nothing. And thereby Jesus is the first man to fully restore that relationship with his Father and to preserve it and to vanquish evil. This is what our lives are all about. It's about this constant battle in our lives between the relationship, the friendship that we have with God and with one another, and the temptation to break that relationship and replace it with something else that is not friendship. I will give you two examples from the world of movies to illustrate this. It's this recent movie, Wonder Woman 1984, and it's an older movie that most of you are familiar with, The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars. For those of you that haven't seen these two stories or movies, I will set the scene. I'll explain it. So Wonder Woman tells the story about this stone. And this is a magical stone. And if you touch the stone, you can make a wish. And anything you wish for will be given to you. But there is a price you have to pay. The stone will also take something of equal value away from you. So it's a trade-off. You get something, but you also have to give something away, and you lose something. And everyone in the film is tempted by the stone and wishes for something. And until this man appears, this guy who always is on television, always tries to present himself like a successful businessman, but who in his past has been incredibly hurt He's been mistreated, maltreated by his parents, ridiculed, was not respected. And his entire life seems to be this catching up with that reality and trying to fill the hole in his soul with stuff. Because ultimately, what he truly misses is friendship, is respect, is this loving relationship with his parents that he never had. And so it's never enough. There's always something more that he needs. And so when he touches the stone, he wishes that he himself becomes the stone. That anyone who touches him will get his or her wish granted, but he will get something from them, something that he needs. Well, you can imagine what happens. Everybody that can make a wish often or almost always wishes for the wrong thing. Because just like this man, most of us are broken too. And broken people ask for broken things. This is easy to understand. When you experience a breakup in a relationship, who hasn't experienced that, whether it is with your spouse or your children, a good friend, family, that broken relationship hurts because we are meant to be in relationship with one another. It breaks the core of who we are. And so we try to fix it. And because it hurts so much, we try to fix it quickly. And what do? We compensate. The hole in our soul that is caused by the breaking of this relationship, we try to replace it as soon as possible with whatever is in our reach. Food, entertainment, a search for power, a search for respect. We go on a shopping spree, but it's never enough. It's never enough because the relationship that was broken is not healed. And so we keep filling the hole with stuff that ultimately cannot cure us. And in Wonder Woman 1984, this leads to a total disaster. The entire world is forgetting that what is truly their happiness and their future is friendship. And everybody chooses stuff for themselves, a Porsche, nuclear missiles to threaten another country, etc., etc. So the entire world is about to explode. And the solution is, strangely enough, not Wonder Woman, even though she is a superhero. She cannot fix it either. She's broken too. The only way to fix the situation is by giving up your selfish wish and replace it with friendship and search to heal what was broken. I won't spoil how that is done in the movie 1984, but even though it's not a very good movie, I thought that the core of the story is so relatable and so true and so confronting. I was like, after the movie, it's like, wow, this movie is about me. Another example, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. This is the story about Luke Skywalker and his father, Anakin Skywalker. And his father, a long time ago, has gone through incredible trauma. He has lost his mother in a very violent way. And then he loses so much more. He loses the respect of the Jedi. He loses the respect of his own teacher. He loses all his friends. And then there is this emperor. Well, he's not emperor yet, but this senator who sees his weakness and is trying to tempt Anakin into giving up these friendships, these bonds, this family, and replace it with power. Replace it by violence. And Anakin falls for it because he's hurting so much. But then in The Empire Strikes Back, he discovers that he has a son, Luke. And in a confrontation at the end of the movie, Luke discovers that he has a father, which he didn't know, and that father has fallen to the dark side. And his father stretches out his hand and says, "Join me, and together we will rule the galaxy." The first part of his invitation sounds good. Join me. Let's be father and son. The second part is the perversion. Together we will rule the galaxy. As if power is what you need. Whereas the only thing that Luke needs is a father. And so Luke is confronted, just like Anakin, with this same temptation. Do I choose power or not? And he doesn't. He refuses to be tempted, just like Jesus in the gospel. And he lets himself fall into this chasm. He's ready to give his life rather than betray his friends. And then we know how this ends. When he falls down this huge chasm, he doesn't die. But underneath Bespin City is this falcon, the Millennium Falcon, like a bird, flying underneath and catching him before he can fall to his death. And who brings him into safety? His new family, his true family, his friends, that console him and embrace him. Just like in this gospel, after Jesus has resisted Satan, the angels come to serve him and surround him with their warmth, protect him with their wings. I think it's a beautiful story that shows us that this Lent is about learning and relearning that you cannot fix the hole in your soul with stuff. And that the more you let go of what you have used to compensate for what hurts you and what pains you, the more you renounce that, the more your heart becomes open for God to mend what is broken in you. Broken people ask for broken things, but people that are healed ask for the only thing that matters.